ever there is a picture that says 1,000 things, this is it. This really is. Because you can read through the case. Brings it.
Experts, when indeed the medical we lost our son. Nobody can ever change.
You always assume that you know what the prosecution's going to do, but there's always a surprise, a twist.
I have my adversarial hat on. I'm ready to go in and do what I have to let the judge know Alan's side of the story.
Very nervous, getting closer and closer.
All right.
The defense chooses a trial without a jury.
In the name and by the authority
Someone
eyes. You ought to know that. Responsibility, duty. Those are large and important words, impressive words. But knowledge is important. And Mrs. Griffen did not have any operative knowledge upon which to base decisions. We shouldn't be here. And I believe when this court hears the evidence that will be presented to this court, the court will conclude the same, and the court will return a not guilty verdict in support of my client, Jean Griffen. Thank you, Your Honor.
Very well, thank you.
So the opening arguments have been made. Officially, it's only Alan's parents who are on trial here, but it's fair to say probably everybody connected with this tragic story shares guilt. An entire system failed, and as a result, an 11-year-old boy is dead. This case raises delicate questions. When do parents forfeit their privilege to raise a child? And when should society and government step in? As you're about to see and hear, these are issues that go far beyond this old courthouse in America's heartland.
The anti-lock brakes on the Acura Integra were inspired by those used to stop jet aircraft. And while you might expect to find such technology on a multi-million-dollar airplane, you might not expect to find it on an automobile that costs considerably less.
Tonight it cost everybody a love. Ragu, old world style. Yeah, right. Excellent, Mom.
Ragu old world style. When it comes to sauce, there's only one question.
working the fields out here, you know, he'd come out and want to ride the tractor with us, so.
Well, he liked the animals, he liked the country.
Circle up, join your hands. See how many we got here.
Pictures of a young boy's short life.
If you know anything about scouting, every year we have spot cards. We make these. So this is a dad and son project.
This was Alan Griffin's last photograph.
This was taken about a month before he died.
So he's how old now?
He was 10, almost 11. Alan, Alan, Alan. There's just lots of Alan everywhere. All our dreams, everything died when he died.
911. Yeah, we need an ambulance at 53.
The voice of Jean Griffen pleading for help on the morning her son died.
Pronto.
Okay, what's the problem there, ma'am?
Our son, he's not breathing.
Now part of the prosecution's case against Jean and Terry Griffen.
I don't know if he's not unconscious, but he's not breathing very well.
Okay, ma'am, what's the problem? What's he got?
When you got the 911 call, I picked up the phone. I then asked her if anyone knew CPR. She said her husband was performing CPR at that time.
Then I proceeded to do CPR on him.
No response.
No response. I continued CPR until help came.
Okay, try to keep calm, ma'am.
No, you don't keep calm when your son is like that.
I know it.
She had told me that he had been constipated and had gas throughout the night. And I guess I just didn't understand why he would just quit breathing.
Officer Spraska, that's the tape that you listened to?
Yes, it is.
No further questions?
Did you think he was dead when he left?
No, not at all.
Fact is, I thought that, you know, they'd get him to the hospital and everything would be okay.
Alan died or was pronounced dead upstairs in the emergency room. I did perform the autopsy here also. More, Dr. Bennett here.
Dr. Thomas Bennett, the state medical examiner, first suspected neglect.
I got called because there was a sudden death in a young boy that looked very suspicious. Taking a look at little Alan Griffen, he knew something was wrong.
For the prosecution, Melody Haynes.
Neglect was the issue that seemed to jump out at everybody to begin with. Why wasn't this child taken to a hospital? Why did the child die at home?
These are pictures taken during the course of the autopsy.
We object to those kinds of photographs because they excite passion and prejudice against the client.
Defense lawyer Carla Foltz.
And they're not pleasant photographs.
You're looking at a little boy here who's got no reserve. You know, he's not able to breathe. His arms are just wasted down to nothing. There's no fat. His skin is so thin it looks like he's almost purple colored.
Have you ever seen pictures like those?
No, I have never seen pictures like that. But that does not necessarily mean that my client, Jean Griffen, is guilty of some criminal act.
But you saw him, his physical shape changing, did you not?
It was so gradual, I didn't see it. I didn't see it at all.
What was the approximate weight of the child?
I estimated the weight of Alan as being approximately 45 pounds. He was very thin, but because of all this fecal mass within his abdomen, there were 22 pounds of feces comprising a significant proportion of Alan's weight.
According to Dr. Bennett, Alan died of peritonitis, an infection of the abdomen.
Let's talk specifically about Alan's gastrointestinal system. And I have before you a chart.
The prosecution wants to prove that in the last hours, it should have been obvious to the Griffins that their son was a sick boy.
You have an opinion as to approximately how long the pain would have been present prior to the onset of death?
He would have had discomfort for a period of days and weeks beforehand. Pain, undoubtedly for a period of several hours, if not even longer, prior to his death.
This is the first conflicting testimony.
During the night that he died, he never cried once.
No, there was no indication whatsoever to either one of us that there was any pain. Because had I seen pain, immediately, that would have been like a red flag.
The question of pain is a crucial point for Prosecutor Haynes.
Doctor, would you agree that the classic textbook presentation of a patient with peritonitis in the abdominal cavity
as a patient who suffers from a great deal of pain.
She tangles with a doctor from the defense, Dean Antonson.
No, I think there is a wide spectrum of response to peritonitis, and in particularly in children. I think more so in children, for instance, than in adults.
My theory is Alan was in a lot of pain when he was dying, but he was probably pretty close to being comatose. That's what everybody says.
Did death come swiftly to Alan Griffen?
No.
He just collapsed in my arms. Just total collapse. When I got him to the couch, I checked if he was had a pulse. He did not. Was not breathing. When Alan collapsed in my arms, that's when I knew it was critical.
In this case, I think that indeed there is a factor of neglect, and that neglect has to come back on the parents. They're the primary caretakers.
The issue of neglect has now been raised by the prosecution, but the defense maneuvers to point the guilty finger of neglect away from the parents.
It's your opinion that this is a case of neglect by the medical person or persons involved. Is that not true?
My conclusion is that Alan clearly had signs of neglect. His problem was a medical one, so there is evidence of neglect of his medical condition. So yes, there's medical neglect.
Tom Bennett said that the child was a victim of medical neglect by medical persons.
The examiner said today 11-year-old Alan Griffen died of medical neglect. Dr. Thomas Bennett took the witness stand in the child endangerment trial of Griffen's parents. He did not lay blame for the neglect of Griffen's condition. He still has been covering the trial.
If I were Melody, I'd have some concerns.
Now, Norelco has taken a razor that was seemingly perfect and made it better by giving you a new level of closeness without giving up any of our legendary comfort. Norelco's patented lift and cut system has been improved to lift each hair and cut it even closer without the blades touching your skin, giving you an even closer shave with the same incredible comfort. The new Norelco, a whole new level of closeness and comfort.
I want to fly in business class. My company only pays for coach, so I fly business class for the price of coach. It's called beating the system. Of course, you can't do it on just any airline.
Now till December 15th, when you buy an unrestricted domestic coach ticket on TWA, you can reserve a confirmed seat in our business class for the price of coach.
You pay for coach, you sit in business class, and it isn't even your birthday.
TWA's business class. We did it first, we do it better.
One of the biggest blockbusters of the season is not an action-adventure movie or a sci-fi thriller. In fact, it's not even playing at your local movie theater. It's at your local Subaru dealer. It's the Subaru Blockbuster. Talk about a powerful performance. You can get the Subaru Legacy L Sedan with air conditioning, cruise control, and AM/FM stereo cassette at spectacular savings. The Subaru Blockbuster. This one is a must-see.
Now playing at a Subaru dealer near you.
Next, Jake goes undercover.
You want me to commit murder?
But will an old romance bring new danger?
Jealousy could get me dead.
On Jake and the Fat Man. A murder investigation leads to one suspect.
I think Frank Williams killed him.
A man without an alibi.
They're coming after you for Dan.
Knots Landing, Thursday. Saturday, a peaceful vacation turns into a treasure-hunted horror. A deadly battle of power and greed. Perry King, Michael Beck. Only one survived.
Young people need positive role models. If a parent is involved in casual drug use, then the child may get the impression that drugs are okay. And they're not.
Even if the doctors had been indicted, they wouldn't be looking at 10 years like our clients. You know, they're looking at 30 days in jail or a $100 fine.
Defense lawyers Carla Foltz and Bill Price working on strategy.
And the doctor's mistakes were 10 times or 100 times more serious than any error that the parents made.
That is exactly what the defense attorneys are trying to do.
Prosecutor Melody Haynes.
There is no doubt this kid fell through the system in 15 different ways. There's no question about that there were many different opportunities for people to catch this. But this isn't a malpractice case.
Sir, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
As you count them up, how many doctors or medical people did you contact over Alan?
It was 1, 2 specialists.
Alan R. Kaufman, MD. I'm a gastroenterologist. Jeffrey Drew Stahl, internal medicine, gastroenterology.
Our family doctor. There was we went to a counselor.
The tragic thing is that any time that last week or that last weekend, his life could have been saved if he had been brought to a doctor or brought to the emergency room.
Dr. Alan Kaufman was the last doctor to see Alan Griffen alive. On May 12, 1989, 10 days before he died.
I asked him about his abdominal distension because he was obviously distended to look at him even from across the room. And he said he had been distended like that for a period of years. It did not cause him any particular discomfort.
At no time, doctor, did you tell Mr. Griffen or Mrs. Griffen that this child was critically ill? That's true, isn't it?
No, that's correct.
And at no time did you tell them that if they didn't take him to Mayo's clinic that he might die? You didn't tell them that either, did you?
No, I didn't tell him that.
Kaufman had been filling in for his partner, Jeffrey Stahl.
We have to go downstairs.
Okay.
Stahl saw Alan in January for the first time.
I feel compelled, absolutely compelled, to try to nail Stahl and Kaufman right to the wall, because that's where they belong. I'm Bill Price, and I represent Terry Griffen. Doctor, if you observed a child who looked as Alan Griffen did on May 12, 1989, what would you do as a physician?
I would have mandated, I think, immediate disinfection and probably hospitalization to do it. But
that's not what Dr. Kaufman did.
Again, I didn't have any inclination at that time that he was as ill as he actually was. And it was all based on conversations I had with the patient, more importantly with his parents.
In the critical last days of Alan Griffen's life, neither doctor examined the boy, but Dr. Stahl's office was in touch with the parents.
What did you try to do for Alan Griffen in May of 1989?
I tried to get him seen again because it was my suspicion at that time that we had come to that point that I had warned his parents about, that the colon was becoming more and more dilated. It probably was impacted.
And did his parents bring him back into the office as you tried to do?
No.
Mrs. Griffen admits she spoke with Dr. Stahl's nurse 3 days before Alan died.
I called, and she said, okay, an appointment. And she wanted it on the 19th. And I said to her, my exact words, is it absolutely necessary that he come in on the 19th because that's his birthday? She said no.
I ran into some unusual people who refused our regular follow-up, who refused to come back, who refused the normal studies, and now are trying to say that somehow I should have overcome all that.
But the defense feels Stahl has his own credibility problem.
Doctor, that's the same matter that you altered on your medical records itself as to where the family was going to follow up, isn't it, Doctor?
No, it's not.
He wrote on Alan Griffen's medical chart that he had told the parents to call him if there were any changes. This was added after Alan died.
Are you telling this court you have no recollection of having added anything to your records?
That's actually correct.
And the only reason you even acknowledge the fact it happened is I'm sitting here with 2 sets of your records in your deposition. Isn't that correct, Doctor?
That's right.
And your records were changed, weren't they?
I made an addition to the record, as I do in many occasions.
If they ask you any questions you don't understand, stop and say, I don't understand. If you're confused, stop. If you need a break at any time.
Tell us what your name, please.
I'm Veronica Zenti.
What's your occupation?
I'm a school nurse at Johnson School Community.
Nurse Veronica Zenti was one of the last medical professionals to see Alan before he died.
Registered nurse?
Registered nurse.
She almost saved his life.
And what was it that you observed about Alan on the 12th?
I was concerned something was going to rupture.
What did you do?
I called Dr. Stahl's office. I I mentioned my concerns about the abdomen. I mentioned the fact that it looked like he was losing weight.
I was upset. I was frustrated, not real pleased with the things that she had done.
What has she done specifically?
Well, specifically calling the doctors before talking to me, not asking my permission to call them and talk to them. I really didn't feel that she had that right to do that.
Then I called Mrs. Griffen. At that time, I asked her how Alan looked that morning.
What did she say about how distended it was?
She did not say it was distended. It was flat that morning. At that point, I knew I needed to move on it because there was no way I could believe that.
What happened on the 17th?
Alan was not in school. He had been called in as being too weak to come to school. Those were red flags for me. I reported the case to Protective Services.
On May 22nd, an anxious Veronica Zente calls the Department of Human Services to find out what's been done with her report. She reaches a secretary.
At that time, she told me that that report had been rejected, and I asked why. And at that time, she put me on hold to get her supervisor, Mark Chappelle. I was on hold for Mr. Chappelle when my principal came in, and that's when I found out that Alan died.
You did a very good job. Your testimony is damaging. It is very damaging to them.
A lot of people pointing the fingers of blame at the two of you parents.
That's right.
And you seem to be pointing the finger of blame someplace else.
As prudent and responsible parents, we went to the appropriate places for help. We did that. And that is our responsibility. That is our responsibility. Because of our background, we trusted. And I realized, that's our responsibility. We shouldn't have trusted so much. We shouldn't have trusted them. We shouldn't have trusted those people.
Who? Those people?
Well, we shouldn't, in particular, the doctors.
They were not all trusting. They were completely antagonistic and were unwilling to follow and trust simple recommendations of things that could have led to some help.
In the end, though, doesn't the buck really stop with parents?
The buck stops with all of us. We're all responsible for our children. Not only the parents, the schools, the doctors, the nurses, friends. Everybody has a responsibility.
The best analogy is this. Alan Griffen and his parents were on a bus from the beginning to the end. He'd had this problem for 5 years. And they went down this bus line, and there were people who hopped on the bus here and there and got off. Nobody stayed with it the entire time. But the only people who were there the entire time was Mary and Jean Griffen.
So the issues are before the judge. The question of who is to blame for the totally preventable death of Alan Griffen. His parents still have a tough decision to make. Should they take the stand in their own defense against charges of neglect? And the judge still has to hear critical testimony for the prosecution. An 11-year-old girl, a classmate of Alan's, who was one of the last people to see the Iowa fourth grader alive.
These folks gotta be proud. You see, for 7 years now, everybody's been trying to beat the minivan we built here. But nobody's been able to do it. So we did. We rounded the corners and lowered the front end. We redesigned the interior and added rear seat shoulder restraints. And you can get anti-lock brakes and all-wheel drive. Now the competition can stop wasting their time trying to copy our old minivan and start wasting their time trying to copy our new one.
If you sometimes feel like an underdog in business, here's a whole new way to compete. Make one phone call to Sprint and a telecommunications specialist will custom design a small business package just for you. It'll have all the cutting-edge technology that only big business used to be able to afford.
1,000 by the 30. We're in business.
So you can get to be one of those big, rich companies that everybody resents.
Because that was
their expertise.
48 Hours will continue.
They should have never missed him.
Is Neil Frazier a local anchor man you can trust?
Your worst nightmare.
Find out when WIOU premieres tonight on CBS. She's seen too much.
I have to talk to you.
He doesn't want to get involved.
It's 2 o'clock in the morning. What are you, a vampire?
Now, they need each other. But the mystery is, will they get along? Edward Woodward and Jessica Lundy.
That girl is impossible.
Over My Dead Body, the 2-hour premiere Friday.
This is CBS.
Good evening, I'm Shirley Hancock.
And I'm Mike Donahue. We have a verdict in the case of Tom Metzger. We want to take you right now to the courtroom of Judge Ansel Haggerty.
If you were watching Newsroom 6 at 5 on Monday, you saw the only live coverage as the verdict was read.
Did one or more of the California defendants, through their agents, substantially assist in or encourage the conduct of the Oregon defendants that caused the death of Mulgeta Sarah? The answer is yes.
When it's important, Oregon and Southwest Washington's news station is there. Watch Newsroom 6.
I could talk all day about what it takes to make this farm work. But when it gets right down to it, getting the job done is the only thing that counts. That's why I'm voting for Dave Frohnmeyer for governor. He's a doer, not a talker. And what he's done over the last 15 years proves it. He's cracked down on crime and fraud and fought the feds over Hanford. In fact, his office brings in more for Oregonians than it spends. Dave Frohnmeyer understands real people problems and doesn't let up till he finds solutions. That's worth my vote.
Teen parents, mommy and daddy youngest, next to Rolda.
For whatever reason Alan died, this tragic case might never have ended in court without Cynthia Hubert's front page story in the Des Moines Register. Cynthia, this headline, your story. Why didn't someone save Alan Griffen? As you walk through the Iowa State Fair, you just don't expect things like that to come from the Midwest.
No, you don't. There is a very pervasive feeling here that the family is sacrosanct. What happens within the walls of someone's home is nobody's business but that person.
Here at the Iowa State Fair, fasten your seatbelt.
I do think that some of the traditional values that make Iowa a wonderful place to live and to raise children in may have worked against this little boy.
Of course he's in heaven. Of course he is. There's no doubt in my mind. Of course. He's at peace. And I got peace of mind on that.
Alan Griffen is buried in the Iowa country he loves, just down the road from his grandparents' farm.
He told me one day, he said, Grandma, this will always be home up here. I guess he came home. It's a sad story.
Well, that's Gene's father's farm. It's been in the family for about 100 years. This is where he was raised.
And for 7 years, this was Alan's home.
Dad. Dad.
Come here.
What I miss most when they come up and Alan ain't in the back of their car. They never get over it.
What are you doing? Huh? Sit down. This is Alan's dog. From purebred Blue Heeler, Australia.
Hi, Mom.
But news of the trial even reaches the farm.
He said Alan had 9 years. Do we need to know what? Oh, no.
I milked a lot of cows all my life, about 60 years, I guess, I milked cows.
Those white buildings up there on the hill, that's where we lived. All this land that you see, all the way up to those white buildings, were our land we farmed at. He was very happy. This was his life. He followed us around every place. Victor Grandpa.
When Alan was here, they were good times.
Yeah, that was the highlight of his life.
For the Griffins, Those good times ended when the farm crisis crippled the heartland in the early 80s.
Pretty stressful times, you know.
Your blood and sweat and tears are out there in the field day in and day out, you know, and then you have to give it up. It's like losing a child.
To keep Alan's grandfather from going under, the Griffins sold this farm.
I just take care of the hogs, see that they have feed and water.
And moved with Alan to the city.
We think that was the beginning of its problem. Going from a slower environment, and it was peaceful and quiet out here.
You move to the city, you don't know your next door neighbor.
When I was working the ground, you know, I'd be out in the field almost all day, both of us. So Grandma took care of Alan.
I was down there with him for 3 days over his birthday.
Freshly baked cookies, ha-ha.
Giving him mineral oil like the doctor said. He was uncomfortable, but even the last few days, he was never in pain. Never heard him complain once.
I think when that little man walked into the doctor's office, they should have been right out of their chair, because that was their expertise. They should have never missed him.
2 specialists? 2 specialists? How could they miss that? The child had no abuse whatever. Never. We loved him too much to do that to him. Our children were never abused. Christians don't abuse their children. We are Christian people.
You will see that there's a great big tree that shades. It's very peaceful.
It's a beautiful setting.
It's the kind of environment that he loves.
Yeah.
Just shouldn't be here. Just shouldn't be.
Today's Duracell batteries still give you the life you need. There's a date that proves it. So you've got nothing to be afraid of. Today's Duracell, date-coded. For 4 years storage. Get a free Dracula Crayola coloring book with any Duracell battery purchase. Look for the display at your local store.
Presenting the $9,500 Advantage. It comes with the Chrysler New Yorker 5th Avenue, which comes with a fuel-efficient 3.3-liter V6, a standard driver's airbag, better owner care than any Cadillac sedan, and a price tag $9,500 less than Cadillac Sedan DeVille. Chrysler 5th Avenue. Luxury with a $9,500 Advantage.
Now get the added advantage of cash back or low APR financing on new 91 models.
By 10:30 tomorrow morning, one company will guarantee delivery of your overnight air packages to more people, places, and businesses than anyone else in the business. UPS introduces 10:30 a.m. guaranteed overnight air delivery. 62,000 trucks. No waiting.
It is estimated that more than 20 million people will come down with colds this year.
It's time for a powerful weapon.
More than 10 million workdays will be lost.
It's time for a powerful weapon.
More than 20 million school days lost.
It's time for Benadryl Plus cold formula with the strength of Benadryl plus a maximum strength nasal decongestant plus a maximum strength fever and pain reliever. Fight back with Benadryl Plus cold formula, a powerful weapon in the Cold War.
You got a crime wave out there, Alan.
I'm here.
The Flash, Thursday at 8:30.
Wood Newton loves a good joke.
Coach Newton fired?
Unless the joke's on him.
We did not rob a bank. You didn't find any money on us, did you?
We could have stashed it.
Evening shade. Then, who says chivalry is dead?
Are you guys leaving?
The lady entered.
Oh, excuse me for not shaving my leg.
It's an all-new Baghdad Cafe right after Evening Shade Friday.
Bye, Mom. My name is Jessica Barron. Today it's my first day of school and I'm going to learn all sorts of new stuff. So it's going to be pretty fun. Hey, kitty.
If Alan Griffen were alive today, he would probably be walking with Jessica to catch the first bus of the school year.
Alan Griffen lives there. He used to live there. Sometimes I just try to ignore it. It's just kind of hard to live with the sad because he's dead now. Because he acted like he was so happy. Hi, January. And then he just started to get sick, and then when he found out he died, it just kind of shocked me.
Good morning and welcome to the 1990-91 school year at Johnston Middle School. We want you to learn.
When did you talk to him last, Jessica?
The Thursday or the Friday that he died, before he died. And when I saw him, he couldn't get off the couch.
It was the last time anyone saw Alan alive, except for his family. And that's what makes Jessica a critical witness for the prosecution.
Let me tell you about what some of the things are that I'm going to be thinking. You're going to think I'm kind of silly for asking you some of the stuff. That's so I can show the judge that you know the difference between telling the truth and telling a lie. And I'll ask you stuff like, today Christmas. Am I the Easter Bunny? How you feel about this?
Nervous.
No, nothing to be nervous about. All right, here we go. Mom, you come right behind me.
It's been a bad experience for her.
Jessica, just try your best to answer what they ask you, okay?
The grand jury was very traumatic for her. She got real sick in the grand jury because she was so upset.
You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Very well. Let me take a stand.
I think it wouldn't have been so bad if we didn't have to keep going back through it again. Because, I mean, he was her best friend.
Jessica, did you have a little friend by the name of Alan Griffen?
We were buddies.
Her testimony is significant, and we want to leave the judge with the thought that this little 11-year-old knew how sick he was. Jessica, do you remember the last time that you saw Alan before he died?
I saw him the Thursday or the Friday before he died.
How did he look that day when you saw him?
His arms were really thin. He was pale.
How do you feel about the fact that Alan's mother and dad have been put on trial?
First you think, well, they kind of deserve it because they let him, it's like they almost let him die.
Who answered the door?
His mom. She said he couldn't play.
Did he get up and say hello?
No. And then you kind of feel sorry for him, too. He just moved his head so he could see me, and he smiled, sort of.
Take a break. We can call the step back in the court reporters.
Yeah, we can ask for a brief recess.
She saw the parents crying, and that was hard for her. She thought she hurt their feelings, and she didn't want to hurt anybody. But ultimately, I think that the parents should have forced the issue. All right? Can you go now? Yeah. How could you not know your own child was that ill? It just tears my heart out.
You know, when I was a little girl, I wanted to be a ballerina, so people would give me flowers, you know.
Not all the Griffins' neighbors have lined up on the prosecution's side of the fence.
You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Heather Rice's sons were also Alan's friends.
Mrs. Rice, do you have an opinion as to whether or not Terry or Jean would have ever deprived Alan of medical care that they believed he needed?
I cannot believe that they would ever even entertain the idea. They really did love Alan. He was the center of their life.
Now, only two people have not spoken up in court, Jean and Terry Griffen.
Ready?
Ready to proceed.
Today, their grand jury testimony will be played on tape by the prosecution.
When did you first start to notice the distension in his tummy? It seemed to always be there. Always there.
And then it built up to a point where we could see he was really uncomfortable and he was having trouble going. And so we had to do something about it.
The tape amounts to an admission in a lot of respects. They knew that he was having very serious symptoms and did nothing about it.
But the defense lawyers believe the tapes will help their clients by showing the Griffins' grief.
I held that child in my arms when he was born and watched the light of life in his eyes. 11 years later, I had to hold him in my arms again and watch it go out. But I hope to God that no other parent has this feeling that I did. A question that wasn't asked and well answered before the grand jury.
After a final strategy session, the Griffins decide not to take the stand in their own defense.
I said everything that I needed to say in the grand jury.
Ms. Haynes, is there any further rebuttal on behalf of the state?
No, Your Honor, the state rests.
That being the case, the court will be in recess then until 1:30 tomorrow afternoon.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Court is in recess.
All right, I'm gonna kiss your hug. Good night.
I love you.
Sweet dreams.
The first couple weeks of his death, you know, I couldn't sleep and everything because I was scared that something might happen to me. Since the trial is on, sometimes a lot of dreams about him.
The verdict when we come back.
Ocean Spray, Strawberry Sweet, Cranberry Crisp, Ocean Spray, most refreshing.
Strawberry and cranberry. What a refreshing new idea.
Oh, snacking isn't hip without a real cheese dip. That's cheese snack fact.
It's a fact. Cheese makes great snacks. So visit the cheese snack shop at your store.
If you want to top this, add a slice of Swiss. That's a cheese snack fact.
I'm going to write you every week, Dad.
Oh, like when you went away to camp.
No, I really mean that.
You won't write.
Dad.
You call. Here. That's our new personal 800 number.
What?
It means you can call home anytime you want, and you don't need any money.
Dad?
Yes?
Could I have some money anyway?
Introducing MCI Personal 800, a very new, very affordable way to stay in touch.
Do certain women possess a beauty secret you do not? Yes. New DuPont Certified Stainmaster Luxura Carpet. It's richer, it's thicker, and it's Stainmaster. Exclusively DuPont.
Luxura carpet as low as $19.99 a square yard. Available at color tile stores everywhere.
Come on, Will. Come on, Will.
For all the players in the Griffin case, it's a final reprieve before the last act.
You have to do something for yourself during the course of a trial. And this is what I do. It's my getaway.
This is the newest member of the Fultz grandchildren clan, William.
How does Heather like it?
She likes hers done.
Well, then, we're going to go back. We're going back to work. We're just going to go back to normal routine.
You'd like to say, Grace?
Sure. For food, for raiment, for life, for opportunity, for friendship and fellowship. We thank thee, O Lord.
The court will recognize Ms. Haynes for a closing argument on behalf of the state.
Thank you, Your Honor. Common sense says that when 3 nurses, when 3 doctors, 5 teachers, 1 principal, 1 counselor, 2 neighbors, and a little 11-year-old girl have enough sense to see this kid and know that he's very sick. Why didn't Mr. and Mrs. Griffen see it? Because they denied it. Because they refused to believe it.
These parents had no knowledge of the urgency of the situation. They didn't know how serious it was. And there isn't one scintilla of evidence in the state's case to indicate that they were ever told.
You can't expect anybody else to raise your children. You can't expect the doctors to raise your children. Each of us is born with this innate urge, if you will, to have children, to protect them. It's instinctive. And they ignored that instinct. And in the last 10 days of his life, they watched him die. That's willful deprivation, and that's child endangerment.
The state would have you believe that Jean Griffen and her husband, Terry Griffen, are monsters. They're monsters who allowed their child, a child that was the most precious part of their life, to die in agony before their very eyes. This court must, under these facts, acquit my client, Jean Griffen, and her husband, Terry Griffen. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mrs. Foltz. Court is in recess.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Now, Judge Walters must decide the Griffins' fate. Three weeks later.
The fate of a Johnson couple is in the hands of a Polk County judge, and this afternoon the two will find out what the future holds for them.
If they convict us, they're going to be dragging a whole lot of parents into court from now on.
It's just an ounce of retribution for this little boy's life.
If they put us in prison, well, so be it. I don't see that serving mankind.
I've got a real serious case of butterflies.
All right. For this recording, State of Iowa, Polk County is now in session. Your Honorable Judge Walters presiding.
Please be seated, everybody.
You just never know what a judge is going to do.
The court will now read its verdicts. In criminal number 47670, the court finds that the defendant, Terry Griffen, is not guilty of the crime of child endangerment as charged in the indictment. In criminal number 47671, the court finds that the defendant, Jean Griffen, is not guilty of the crime of child endangerment as charged in the indictment. While there is much to be critical of in the defendant's handling of this matter, the court, in the final analysis, is simply left with a firm and abiding doubt as to whether the defendants intentionally deprived Alan Griffen of necessary health care. Court is in recess.
Sad moment. Nobody won in this case. I hope that we did some good for somebody else.
Whole flood of local cameras downstairs and all.
Just walk out with it.
Walk in with my head high.
I have no problem with that.
If you've ever had a child die, you know that that's something that you live with for the rest of your life.
Okay?
Yep. And then to have to go through all of it all over again is persecution beyond belief.
I don't have any problem with this. If they believe as they walk out of the courthouse that they are exonerated completely from any wrongdoing. Obviously, we're disappointed in the verdict. We worked so hard on this case. Then I say that's not right. That's not what happened. And you better look twice at that opinion.
All set.
The court would note only what is painfully obvious, and that is that the death of Alan Griffen was an unmitigated and thoroughly needless tragedy. Virtually everything had to go wrong for Alan Griffen to die, and it did.
Because of the Alan Griffen case, the Iowa Department of Human Services, stung by its failure to act on warnings about Alan's condition, has revised its response policy. Now, allegations of neglect brought by people like teachers and doctors must be investigated. We're told the life of one youngster has already been saved. As for Alan's parents, Jean and Terry Griffen, they're thinking of adopting another child. I'm Dan Rather. That's 48 hours for this week. Here's a look ahead to our next report, 1 week from tonight, Wednesday at 8/7 Central and Mountain.
I'll find myself sometimes washing my hands after I've just washed them, and I don't even know why.
Panic?
All of a sudden, strange thoughts started coming in my mind. Powerless to stop it.
Fears? phobia. The obsessions that are trapping millions of Americans.
I could not even literally drive my car 10 blocks from my home.
And the fight to reclaim those crippled lives.
Okay.
High anxiety. Next Wednesday night.
We have a couple of open lines. I'm going to ask you about your verdict on the Griffen verdict.
I cannot believe I was never so angry in all my life that these parents got off. Their lives, their little boy is dead, and they really didn't do anything to take care of him.
I felt this whole thing was a farce in the fact that they made the Griffins their scapegoats.
They should be glad that they're not going to find themselves locked up for some period of time or on a long probation.
I believe that the verdict is right, and I believe that they are owed a public apology.
For a transcript of 48 hours, send $4 to Journal Graphics, 267 Broadway, New York, New York, 10007. And to purchase a VHS cassette of today's broadcast, call 1-800-338-4847.
The battle raging over the budget on taxes. What do millionaires think about plans to soak the rich? Join Charles Carrault and Leslie Stahl on America Tonight. A woman on the edge of death.
She was having an epileptic seizure.
And the cop who must risk his own life to save her.
The car started to slide down on top of me.
Top Cops, Thursday.
The office nitpicker is driving the staff crackers.
He's irksome.
He's rude.
He's Satan's crafty minion. Sounds like a chip dip.
Dr. Thursday.
This is CBS.
You're looking at the best-selling work truck in America, the Ford F-250. It's tough, reliable, built for the long haul. This F-250 4x4 carries more than a ton of payload, yet it goes for a price that won't weigh you down. And you get four-wheel drive, automatic transmission, AM, FM, and all the horses you'll ever need. Well, nearly all the horses. Easy, big fella. You know, there are lots of wheels.
We'll be right back.
But there's only one big money birthday wheel, worth $1,000 cash. Listen tomorrow morning at 7:20. We'll announce a birthday. If it exactly matches yours, you could win $1,000. Match either the day or the month you were born, and you can win $100. Guaranteed. We'll announce birthdays all day long. Lots of chances to win. Listen at 7:20 with the big money birthday wheel on 1190 KEX.
Some controversial remodeling at a Portland housing project. The story tonight.